Hi, and welcome back to Project Stargate. I'm your host, Mark Brenner. Today we have a special guest, Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. He's on Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday on Spaced Out Radio. His website is spacedoutradio.com. Dave is one of the current godfathers of paranormal talk radio. He has a very successful program, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard his show before. But we're very honored and thankful to have you as a guest. Thank you so much, Dave, for being with us, and welcome to Project Stargate.
Mark, thank you so much for inviting me. Believe it or not, I actually don't get a lot of interview requests. So it's kind of nice to do them every now and again because you're always learning, you're always trying to figure things out, see what other people are doing, and I think it's great to be on the other side of the microphone to feel what it feels like to be a guest every now and again. So thank you so much for the invite. Very much appreciate it.
Hey, man, I'm thankful to have you. I'm sorry my co-hosts Greg and Vince couldn't be with us. They had some emergencies pop up, but they hopefully in the future they'll be able to have a chance to interact with you as well. I want to start. I want to get started with this.
Sure.
First of all, I saw your interview with Jimmy Church, and by the way, that was one of the most epic episodes of either one of your shows I've ever seen. The way you guys got the simulcast going on, and then you had that nice lady with you, and I just really I was like, wow. I sat down and for hours and watched both of them back to back. My wife and I did. But I noticed you said something in there about you kind of got into the radio business for a different reason at a very young age. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I when I graduated high school, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was my entire goal. And I never got to do that because up here in Canada back in 1991, going back 31 years here, there was a prime minister, our prime minister in Canada at the time, a guy named Brian Mulroney. He cut the defense budget big time right after the first Gulf War. And literally it froze hiring on the military for fighter pilots. And that's all I wanted to do for the time I was 3 years old was fly jet fighters. And all of a sudden here I was, I planned all my high schooling for that. And I didn't know what to do, man. I really didn't know what to do. Nobody in my household had ever gone to college. I knew nothing about student loans or anything like that. And I was just like, damn, like I could take this flight training course. It's $20,000, which is great. I can do that at the college, but I don't want to fly Cessnas. I don't want to fly commercial planes. I want to fly jets. And they didn't know it was an indefinite freeze on the hiring. And the problem was that by a couple of years later, by the time they had opened up the hiring, I had already blown out my knee. I had pins in my knee, and well, they're not going to take me. I'm broken, And so I healed up from my knee surgery, and I became a hockey instructor for a few years, for 3 years, and was made a bunch of promises there on how it was going to be very lucrative for me financially for the people I was working for. That never seemed to pan out. And I realized that, at 23 years old, that I needed to figure something out because I was going to be a deadbeat if I didn't. And I always liked radio. And I liked talking to people. And so I got into broadcast journalism, and I did a 2-year course on that at BCIT in just outside of Vancouver, with one of the top broadcasting schools in Canada. And that kind of set off my next decade of what I wanted to do. And in 2007, I got out of radio because I got tired of being what we called a pseudo celebrity, which was there was a lot of people who knew who I was. I was a popular guy, but on the flip side, sure as hell wasn't paid like a celebrity.
Right.
And when you have to choose between food on your table and gas in your tank and rent, it's tough.
That it
And
is.
the storyline gets old. So my entire goal when I got into radio was I wanted to work in sports. I knew that. And I did that, which was really cool, a fantastic experience. And I think if I didn't have children, or if I was more selfish person in my life, I probably would have continued that because I loved the job.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah. But on the flip side, I worked for a man who was my direct boss was there is nothing in this world that would make me respect him.
Really?
And like I quit radio, mainstream radio in 2007, so we're going back we're 15 years now. And I still hate the man. I learned a lot off of him, but I still hate the man. And I don't hate a lot of people. But this guy, he tried to ruin me. And
It's awful.
bully. He was an absolute bully. And
Mm-hmm.
when I left radio, I was gone. And I was never ever turning back. Like I was trying to line up a job in the NHL. That's what I was trying to do. Is
That would have been epic, man. That would have been
went
so
my
epic.
way into a job in the NHL and just see where it went. And I mean, I had coached hockey, I had trained hockey players. I had 15 hockey players that I trained that went on to play everything from minor pro to over in Europe to the NHL. And, you feel pretty proud when a kid you helped out at 14, 15 years old is putting on that NHL jersey.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's pretty damn cool.
That's a blessing, man.
It is. I mean, you had a little bit of a part. I knew I was never going to make it as a player. I was terrible, right? But if I could pass that knowledge on, man,
Sure.
and I really wanted a job in the NHL, really wanted a job. And it just never came to fruition, but that's okay. I came close on a scouting position with the Edmonton Oilers. When I left radio, I walked away from everything. I walked away. I was separated from my wife at the time, and I really wanted to try and work on my family back. I knew my wife hated my career in sports and hated my career in radio. I changed careers, and like 2 days after I changed careers, I find out my wife actually had a boyfriend at the time
Oh, no.
who ended up becoming her husband, and after our divorce. And hey, that's the way the ball bounced. She was happy, I wasn't. And 20 years or 15 years later, I can look at it and say, I was being selfish, right? And took a while, but that really, really kind of pushed me into a direction where I was like, I'm out. I am totally out. And so people all of a sudden say, well, if you're out, how did you start Spaced Out Radio? What brought you back in? Well, my experiences did. And a friend of mine at the time named Johnny Enoch, I had hosted I emceed, I shouldn't say I hosted, I emceed a UFO conference that he put on in Vancouver. And then he kind of came up to me and said afterwards, he's like, dude, we got to get you back on the radio. And I'm like, there is no radio station out there that you could just walk in and say, hey, give me the nighttime duties.
I wish it was that easy.
And I'm going to do this show on the woo. So that's not how it works. And he's like, no, man. He goes, we're going to do it digitally. Like, what do you mean? And like, when I left radio, man, people don't understand this. When I left radio, I I knew nothing about online. I mean, blogging wasn't really big then, or vlogging, pardon me, like what we're doing right now. But I mean, there was Blog Talk Radio, Mixler, there was no Spotify, there was no SoundCloud or anything like that. There was, geez, there wasn't even any Apple iTunes or Google Play at that time. And when I left, I didn't know what a podcast was. I didn't know how to download anything or upload anything, or I was out. And then when Johnny told me about all of this online broadcasting that you could do, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, how does this work? And well, once he convinced me, I figured, okay, let's jump into it. And I thought, I mean, this is how silly I thought. I thought maybe there would be 10, 20, maybe 30 people who were doing these topics. Didn't realize it was thousands, and it would continue to grow by thousands. And I was just so naive. Like, looking back on it, if I would have known, like, I didn't know who Jimmy Church was. I didn't know who Dave Schrader was. I knew who Art Bell was. I knew who George Knapp was. I knew who George Norrie was and Connie Willis if they were on Coast to Coast AM. But any of these broadcasters, like these online digital broadcasters talking about our topics, I knew nothing of them. Nothing. Didn't know if they existed, didn't know what they did, didn't know where they were broadcasting from. And if I would have known then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have done it. Probably would not have started Spaced Out Radio, and probably would not be where we are today. But on the flip side, I think the naivety that we had going into Spaced Out Radio, I think that also helped us because we weren't doing it the same way everybody else was.
Can I interject really quick, brother, if you don't mind? So before you're as of right now, you're syndicated, right?
Yes.
Okay. What just ballpark idea? How many radio stations are carrying you right now?
We're on 6 radio stations. Okay.
Are there any in the southern, like in around Georgia, Alabama, Florida, anything like that?
One in Noonan, Georgia.
Okay, that's not far from me. It's about an hour and a half away.
Yeah, WQEE 99 FM.
Okay, cool. Right on, man. I'm just curious. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no. Good question. So I really, when I got into the whole radio side of things, I had a vision of what we needed to do in order to make it. And it's been rocky. It's been tough. I've made a lot of good decisions. I've made a lot of bad decisions. I've literally learned trial by fire. And at times I wish that I would have made better thinking decisions rather than putting trust in people that didn't have myself, my business partner, or the show in their best interest. But that's how you live and learn, right?
Right.
One decision cost us a lot of money that I'm still another year and a half from paying off. But that is something that you have to live and learn with when you think you're making the right decisions and you don't.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. What you mentioned a little while ago about, when you were starting out in radio business, I was in the military. I served in the Army for 3 years, and I had a whole 20-year plus career planned. And then I started having some problems in my marriage, and then I started having some problems with my health, and I ended up had to cut my career short because of my health issues. I was an infantryman in the Army's 3rd Infantry, and anyway, I had which I actually had a major UFO encounter. We can talk about that some other time, actually. But anyway, I understand. I understand what you meant by that. Is you think you got your whole life, figured out 100%, and then here comes something else that changes everything, and you're like, what do I do with this?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what happened. But I mean, look, it's easy to focus on the negative. It's easy to focus on what went wrong, but I don't think we would be where we are today if a lot of right didn't happen. You
Very
know,
true.
a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of hours that have been sacrificed. Like, dude, I don't even know what a day off is anymore because my days off from my daytime job um, literally are filled with radio stuff that has been put off and put off and put off until I get a day off. Like take for instance this interview we're doing right now. Previous to this interview, I had an hour-long phone meeting with my internet guy. Well, we haven't talked in a couple of weeks. Have to do it. Okay? And there's always things that are changing and moving and and the ball keeps rolling. You may stop, but the ball keeps rolling. And that's where the business side comes in. And for a lot of people who don't understand, Spaced Out Radio is a business. We're not just a podcast. We're not
Right.
just a YouTube vlog. We are an actual business that is trying to figure out everything. And, before you could take the big steps, the baby steps really need to be ironed out. Okay, whether it's a logo, whether it's a slogan, whether it's the website, the look, the store, the what does the product sound like on the air, right? And what who do you want to add? I would hate to be a podcaster today if I didn't know the answers. I really would. I mean, there's so many of these so-called networks out there, fake networks that want to charge you $50, $100 a month to broadcast on their channel. And all I'm thinking is, hold on, you want me to do all the work and then you want me to pay you at the end?
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had friends of mine come up to me the other day. They're like, "Hey man, we got offered to be on this network and we're thinking about it." I said, he goes, "But they want to own the rights to our show." He
Wow.
goes, "What do you think we should do?" And he goes, "It's a pretty big opportunity." And I said, "You turn them down." And he goes, "Well, why would we turn them down?" And I said, "Because you work hard for your product." And I said, "They want you to turn over the rights to your show, which means your logo, your everything, your name." And I said, "They aren't paying you a dime for that. They're expecting you to give it to them
Wow.
for the blessing of playing or of going on their digital network."
Wow.
Right?
That sounds shady, man.
Yeah, but
Definitely.
yes. I know there's people out there paying $50, $100 a month plus to go on these online networks. And I sit there, I got offered one a couple years ago. I think it was like an NBC affiliated broad podcast network. They wanted me to pay $6,000 a month.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was out of Los Angeles. They wanted me to pay $6,000 a month to broadcast on their format. I said, "What's in it for me?" "Well, you get a percentage of the advertising that you sell." I said, "Okay."
Wow. I would have been like, no, not no, but hell no.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who is looking to do what we're doing, stay natural, stay true to yourself. If you follow a guideline, what you want to do, uh, even though the game is always changing, you will be able to do it. You will be able to build followers. But the biggest thing that I would suggest for anybody is this: have focus. What is your focus of what you are trying to accomplish with your radio show? Okay, or your podcast or your YouTube channel. You know, what is the focus? What is the direction you want to go? That's the big one. It's not just sitting in front of a microphone. Anybody can sit in front of a microphone and BS. Okay.
Right.
But anybody can play radio. But if you want to create radio, what are you doing to do it? And that's where the word focus comes in. What's your focus of your show? Right. And I went through different incarnations over the years. I'm very proud that I'm one of the only journalists, true journalists out there who actually is an experiencer as well. And there are things that fire me up.
Yeah.
Okay? Like it when I see people who've never worked in journalism a day in their life all of a sudden call themselves a journalist or a UFO journalist or a cryptid journalist or a paranormal journalist. No, you've done nothing to earn that title. We live in a world, this whole online thing is a world of fantasy for most people. And we will do and say anything for clicks. We will do and say anything for followers and subscribers. And the unfortunate part about it is the people out there who are clicking on those shows, clicking on those follows or subscribe button pushes, they're not doing their homework on who the person is. And I think that is a real detriment to why there's a lot of conflicting information out there. I have called out a number of fake journalists over the years. All right. And some have held to this day, hold a grudge against me. And I'm fine with that. I'm completely fine with that because they take it personal that I called them out lying. Right.
Right.
And I'm saying that on a business level. It's like, look, Mark, you could tell me you're a banker and I could give you all my money. And then you could take off with my money and I'd be like, hold on, Mark, you're my banker. Well, I'm not a banker. Right?
I see your point. Absolutely, man.
Right? You're stealing off of people. And here's the other thing that I always say to people too. Because for some reason in the paranormal world, using the word paranormal as a umbrella term to the entire phenomena. We have a lot of fake journalists. We have a lot of fake scientists, people who claim degrees they don't have. Okay. If you are willing, and this is what I tell everybody. Okay. If you are willing to lie about your credentials, how can we trust your research?
That's a good point. Absolutely.
And I really wish that more people out there would do their homework. I really do. It's to the point where I actually have conferences that will now call me up and say, hey, I got this so-and-so here. In their resume, they call themselves a journalist. Check up on it for me. And I will call them back and I'll say, yeah, that person's a journalist, or no, that person's never been a journalist. Right? And when I say journalist, now people will say, well, what's a journalist? There's amateur journalism all the time. Amateur journalism or citizen journalism is a good thing. So, Mark, if you were decided that you were going to start writing a blog about whatever, paranormal, not the drama, but the paranormal, and you were, whether it's about the gear or the teams or whomever, and that's good citizen journalism, right? But journalism is a profession that needs to be studied. You need to learn how to journal information for the benefit of the public. A journalist is supposed to be the eyes and the ears of the public, the police of the public, the watchdog of the public. So when I see someone use that I'm a journalist, okay, like there was one gentleman out there where he went on a tirade that someone called him out about being a fake journalist, and then he went on a tirade saying, "I am a journalist." So I went on Twitter back and I said, "What are your credentials? Which beat did you work?"
And they, us who served in the military, we have something like that happens. We call it stolen valor. It's kind of the same concept.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I said, I can show you where I worked, right? All of a sudden you get blocked. Little proud thing there.
It seems like you've had a pretty long road to get to where you are, and you've worked really hard. I remember the first time I started listening to your program was probably 4 years ago, maybe. I think it was about 4 years ago. I discovered your show on YouTube, and I was like, wow, I was just blown away. But one thing I've heard you talk about very, very somewhat frequently over the years is you met this guy and who in a meditation I think it was a meditation class, and that completely changed your life on a different level. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, my good friend Pascal. So I had started having experiences that I didn't know what was going on, and having a journalistic type of mind. Every time I would have an experience, I would be hit with 100 to 1,000 questions on what is going on. So the group of friends that I was hanging out with at that time, including my partner, who was attending this meditation once to twice a week, and his name was Pascal. And I ended up meeting Pascal at one of these meditations. And I just was enamored with him. And his knowledge, the way he carried himself, the way he challenged people. I mean, he was a big man, like 6'2", 6'3", 330 pounds. He's got these giant Sasquatch hands. And when you shake his hand, he lets you know that, you know what, he's not only smart, but he's a very strong man too. And he's not afraid to give you a little squeeze on your hand to let you know hey, don't bully me, I can take charge. And yet he's so passive. And my experiences started happening very, very fast, very frequently in late 2011. And after a few months where I was barely sleeping, our group of friends said, you really need to meet with Pascal. So we called up Pascal, set up a meeting with him. He came over to our house and we just sat down. I remember we sat down and had some tea, and then he asked me to go for a drive with him. I've known this guy like 2 hours, and it's dark, it's nighttime. And he's like, hey, let's go for a drive. Where are we going? I don't know. We're just going to drive. He goes, you good to go all night? I said, sure, even though I had to work in the morning. And he goes, okay, we'll end when we feel like we end. And we started driving, and he started explaining things to me. And then it all starts off with the small talk. And then he asks me, like, point blank, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Oh, boy.
And I just went, let's go. He goes,
Were you nervous? Were you nervous when he did that? Like a shrill. So you had no idea what this guy was talking about?
No, I didn't think that it would be the entire phenomena.
Right.
I didn't think that it would change my entire life, change my friends, change my financial situation. I mean, at that time, I'm making six figures and I live in a nice house, and I'm the life of the party. Everything, all my friends are like, life is set. I mean, I'm 40 years old or 38 years old at this time, right? Like, life is good, life is set. I don't need anything else, right? And then the
Right.
phenomena came, right?
Did it
And
all just flow in all at once? Did you just start having a hodgepodge of
yeah,
high strangeness?
yeah, it just like, hi, we're here, make room, right? People don't understand how much the phenomena is, how it can play with your head,
Yes, it
you know,
can.
how it can play with your heart, and how it plays with your life. I mean, I went from, and it's funny because I've asked this question a lot, especially to intuitive people. If you know a lot of people who are intuitive, who've been, say, the phenomena really started hitting a lot of people in 2010, right through 2013. Started hitting a lot of people who'd never had experiences before. That seemed to be the timeline, 2010 through 2013, where a lot of people got hit, so to speak. And all of them, they've gone through to, the majority of them have lost money, lost their careers, got fired from jobs, lost maybe a spouse or their best friends. I lost, I changed jobs once, lost a job. I lost all my best friends. Like, we're talking long-term relationship friends, like my one buddy from grade one, my another buddy, 28 years, my best friend, 28 years, told me to F off.
Damn, that's tragic, man.
You know, um, because of going down the rabbit hole. I changed to them, and to them it wasn't for the good, right?
So some people just, if anything that slightly changes the way they see reality is a total deal killer for them. Like they can't, they're so closed minded that they can't handle other possibilities.
No,
Def-
you're absolutely right.
yeah.
And look, I think about my old friends every day. Every day. There has not been a day that goes by that I don't think of my old friends.
Oh, I bet.
But you know what? This is the path that I've chosen. This is the path that I'm taking, and no regrets. No
Well,
re-
it's not in vain, Dave. It's not in vain at all. If for what it's worth, you've taught me a lot.
yeah,
It's been educational for me. Because I've been researching, like I had mentioned earlier, I've had experiences as long as I can remember, and maybe in the second segment, maybe we can get into some of it, maybe hear what you think about some of it.
sure.
But what I've seen more common than not after researching, I've done a little bit of field work, not a lot. I wouldn't consider myself a professional investigator by any means. I have all the gear. I have, like I have the S box. I have a lot of I have a lot of equipment, and I'm still learning how to use it for when I do go out. But what I've seen very consistently over the years, and this theme keeps popping up and popping up and popping up, and that is it. A lot of times, it's not just one phenomenon that happens. Like, I'll give you an example. I had several years ago, me and my partner Greg Ship, who's not with us today, unfortunately. Um, for I think it was about back in 2017 or 2018 summer. Every night in June and July, I was having a UFO close encounter. Now, it was almost every night I would go out to this lake across from where I was living at the time, and I would sit this picnic table, and I would watch this object manifest. And it did it almost every night for 2 months. And finally, I used to work with him. We worked at one of the mega retailers in the U.S. and together, and we closed shop one night. And I said, "Hey, man, I want someone to see what I am seeing. I want them to see, so I people won't think I'm nuts." And sure enough, he came out there. We after we closed shop up. That we went. He followed me back to my house, and he saw this. He saw this object, this apparition of something manifesting it into the nearby horizon, not too far away. And then that night, later on that night, as I went to lay down to go to bed, and we had some a peak at some poltergeist-like phenomenon occurring. I mean, it wasn't very long after that. So it seems like a lot of the cases, it doesn't end with like a missing time event or a UFO encounter or even a Sasquatch encounter in some cases. But it seems like it evolves and from that into some other kind of paranormal fallout. Have you seen that a lot?
Yeah, the phenomena is and this is one of those things where I said earlier where everything is always changing. My attitude towards everything, like what you just said, makes sense. It totally makes sense because I am in strong belief, and I realize I'm in the minority on this, but I am in strong belief that the entire phenomena is related somehow. Like there is this invisible thread that holds everything together that we do not know. It doesn't matter whether it's ghosts, UFOs, aliens, cryptids, near death experiences, psychic phenomena. It is all intertwined. How it is, that's the mystery that we need to figure out. So what you're saying there is really cool. But the other thing that we need to realize too, and this is something that I've learned, is the phenomena is different for everybody. Like I could have went out with you and I may not have seen a thing, but your buddy who came with you from work, he was meant to see that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I've been out there with I've been out there with friends where I'm looking at a UFO and they can't see it.
Yeah. It
Right?
happens a lot, and it's
Yeah.
funny because I had Kathleen Martin back on my program like maybe a few weeks ago or a month ago, and we kind of met. We were talking about that. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So the phenomena and the people who are the loudest mouths in this field are people who are so focused on their own journey into what they're researching that they're not seeing the bigger picture. I argue with my buddy Merle about this from Ghosts of the Great White
Yeah,
North.
I know. I know who Merle is.
We argue about it all the time. Not argue, I shouldn't say argue as in the old fashioned sense of the word, but we debate it. And he's like, "Nah, dude." He goes, "I just don't see where you're coming from." I'm like, "Well, that's because you have an opinion that you don't want to work with UFOs or you don't want to work with cryptids." And this is a guy who's had Bigfoot experience
Hmm.
as well. And but he loves his ghosts and he loves ghost hunting. That is his thing. If he could ghost hunt every day from the time he wakes up until the time he goes to bed, he'd be the happiest man on this planet. Happiest man. Whereas
Sure.
me, I don't care. But I mean, it also comes down to Mark, what is proof? And this
Right.
is where, like in today's field, we see a lot of people out there getting angry. They're tired of anecdotal stories of experiencers. They are tired of fake videos. They're tired of CGI. They're tired of people telling them what they think it is. They want proof. Okay, but what is proof? As an experiencer, such as yourself or myself, our proof is different than someone who has never experienced anything before. All right.
Right.
It's kind of like that old argument. Well, why didn't you take a picture? Have you ever been put in a traumatic situation? Last thing you're thinking of is taking a photo. You're not going to say to a bank robber, if you're in the middle of the bank about to make a withdrawal and all of a sudden the bank is held up and a guy holds a shotgun at your chest, you're not going to say, "Hold on, let me grab my phone from my pocket so I could take a picture of this so I could remember it." right? You're going to have your hands up, or you're going to be lying on the ground, or you're going to be pleading for your safety, right? It's the same thing with the phenomena. If you all of a sudden have a close encounter with a UFO or a Sasquatch or a dogman or a ghost, all right, you are literally not going to be able to say, hold on, let me grab my phone here for a second. I had a prime example that I love to make about this.
Sure.
Is a couple of years ago, my buddy Mike and I went into the forest. We were going to go get some firewood because in my area, I have a wood stove, keeps my house warm in winter. I go looking for firewood every year. I love it. It is one of my favorite things to do. And here we are going up the logging road. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning. It's a foggy day, low cloud day, but it's dry, which is nice. And we come around this bend and we hit this little incline going up this, this hill, not a big hill, but just, how roads incline. That's the way it is. And all of a sudden I see this thing, I'm talking to Mike, I'm driving, and I see this thing kind of flash right in front of my vehicle about 50, 60 feet. So when my eyes focused and I hit my brakes to stop, I had this beautiful lynx standing right on the road.
Wow.
Okay. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking, take a picture. Take a picture. No, I'm not going to take a picture because the time I get the camera out, this thing's going to be gone. Just enjoy this moment. You've never had this moment before. No, take a picture. Okay, I'm going to take a picture. And now I start doing like I have 14 thumbs on as fingers, trying to get my phone unlocked. My phone drops to the ground of my cab of my vehicle. Okay. And this cat is sitting there on the road, kind of like, are you going to take the photo already? Really, you've had this iPhone for how long and you can't figure out how to take a photo? And it was like it shook its head like, screw this, I'm out, and walked across the road, walked into the ditch. Finally, I get my phone up to camera mode and I open up my window and I yell out the window, hey, puss, hold on a second here. Let me get a picture of you. And it stopped right before it entered the forest and allowed me to photograph it. Now, because the iPhone has such a crappy camera on it, I didn't get the photo that I wanted, but I still got it, right? I wanted that photo right in front of my vehicle. But that's just the way it works. Now, if I did that for a lynx where I was safely in my vehicle, okay, where it couldn't hurt me, it couldn't harm me, and it sat there for about 30, 40 seconds, if not a minute, in the middle of the road waiting for me to take its photo. And if I fumbled and bumbled like that for a lynx, what am I going to do for a Bigfoot?
Or a UFO.
UFO, or an alien, or a dogman, or a little person, or a gnome, or a gargoyle, or a sea monster, or a fully visual apparition of a ghost? What am I going to do?
And you, in fact, have had some of those encounters, which I definitely want to get into in our next segment. We get a couple of minutes before we go to break, but I liked I know what you're talking about, because see, those times that almost every single time that I've had those types of encounters, you have your phone on you. I think I got one of the newer iPhones. The camera's decent on it, but it's not, like you said, it's not like an SLR camera. And you're so dumbstruck by what you're looking at. Logic doesn't, the simplicity of pulling your phone out and taking that picture. Sometimes it just doesn't click. It's like you just either completely forget to do it, or you're so nervous and you're just trying to get it, and it's hard to capture that evidence.
Yeah. That's the way it is. And we need to be able to be cognizant of that. All right. Not everybody has, look at, you're military. All right. You're a veteran, and thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But
Thank
there
you.
are situations where, I mean, you are trained to react to certain situations. If you hear a certain type of gun, if you hear the chatter of a machine gun, if you hear explosions in the background, your mind immediately starts doing the mathematical calculations. Okay, that sounded like a grenade that hit, a mile away. Or okay, that chatter of an AK-47 is something that sounds like it's firing away from us, not towards us. You have to be trained in every situation. Please correct me if I'm wrong when I say that. Okay. The thing is with the phenomena where it's different, you don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to show up. You could be in the middle of the forest, hanging on out, hearing noises, but all of a sudden when you look, there's nothing there.
It's like a trickster type element almost.
Absolutely. Or maybe there's an orb. Like, what's a blue orb flying through the trees 60 yards or 60 feet into the tree line from where you are? What's that orb doing? Or maybe you see an alien walk across a logging road, or you open up your closet. Okay. I had a friend of mine here in my town where she walked into her laundry room one day, and this little Ewok looking thing
Oh,
walked out of her out of her laundry room towards her.
wow.
They stopped. They were only like 3 feet apart. They stopped. They looked at each other. One screamed and ran back upstairs. That was her. And the other one
I bet.
screamed and ran around the corner into her closet and disappeared.
That's creepy.
Okay. Never heard of these little Ewok dudes before.
I
And then
haven't either.
all of a sudden, like a year later, I interview a lady named Misha Johnson who starts talking about these little Ewok things.
It's incredible. I see. That's kind of like the near-death experience. I've been researching that for years. My uncle had a near-death experience,
Yeah.
and his was in a valley type setting.
Yeah.
And as I started, after I interviewed Howard Storm. I don't know if you know who he is. He had a real famous near-death experience. He was on an Unsolved Mystery segment, but anyway, his after I interviewed him, I started seeing all these cases that were real similar to what my uncle described. It's kind of like that. You just randomly, if you keep on plugging away at it, you're going to find some patterns in this. But then some of the stuff falls into other patterns. It seems like, that's what it seems like to me, at least. Definitely. This is a good spot to go to break. But when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about what happened to you with your experiences when you had a chance encounter with that lady on the property. I think it was near where you used to live, if I'm not mistaken. And anything else you want to talk about, if that's okay.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, my friend. You're listening to Project Stargate here with our special guest, Dave Scott. We'll be right back. All right, and welcome back to Project Stargate. We're going horns up with my friend here, Dave Scott. Horns up, my friend. That's my favorite intro to any show I've ever seen. Just love it, man. Great band too that plays your theme song. Love their music, man. But anyway, before we went to break, we were talking about we were starting to get into talking about the events that happened after he got into Spaced Out Radio, or around the same time. And Dave, you had some chance encounters with a couple people, and that really took your understanding of of parapsychology and any other paranormal subject to the next level. What happened?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying I don't expect people to believe me. And that's probably one of the biggest changes that I have made in this entire field over the last number of years. And to be honest with you, very few interviews that I do now, I talk about my experiences, because people have become very volatile about anecdotal stories. And to the point where, I personally have been called a liar. I've been called called a snake oil salesman that I've made up all these stories that I have had encounters with for ratings and audience and subscribers and followers, and that's just simply not true whatsoever. You know, I can think of a lot of better things I could do with my time than to work 16 hours plus a day, 6 to 7 days a week on this show, all because I'm BSing my audience about what I've went through personally. I always like to clarify that because, Mark, the more we get into the whole governmental side, especially of UFOs, the more we see these people coming out of the woodwork where they're more than highly skeptical. They don't believe anything. And they don't want to believe anything. They think that this entire field, it doesn't matter whether it's me, you, or somebody who's been doing this forever, like a Richard Dolan or a Grant Cameron, that everything is just bunk because we've never proven anything. And look, I didn't ask for my experiences to happen. They came out of nowhere. Just like for most people, they came out of nowhere. And as I worked along with Pascal, it got to the point where we were so deep into our focus on consciousness and concentrating on what we wanted to happen that we were literally manifesting it. We were manifesting it. And it doesn't matter whether it was the first time I saw a Sasquatch, the only time I seen Sasquatch, to be blunt, or whether it was the alien in the forest with Samantha Mowat. And I know that's the one you want to get to. But I really have a tough time right now talking about my own personal experiences because there's a professional grade that goes along with that where people really tend to believe that, oh, there's another wacko who's doing it for popularity and 15 minutes of fame. That's not true at all. Dude, I would sooner be, spending my time in the evening with my partner and my son where we could do family things together. I would sooner be that guy who doesn't have to leave the hockey rink in the middle of the evening, so I could go set up a radio show, and then my partner, she has to go to get my son out of his hockey gear in the dressing room and afterwards and feed him and get a hold of him. You don't know how many birthday parties and friend get-togethers and family having family over from out of town where all of a sudden it's like, hey guys, it's 7:30. I got to go downstairs into the studio because I got to work.
Man, that's tough.
And how tired I am, right? How much weight I've gained because I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to have a proper eating schedule or anything like that when you're working 16 hours a day. And look, I don't want people to feel sorry for me. This is something I choose to do, right? Because I'm this far deep into it, I got to keep going. And thank goodness I have a family that is 100% supportive of things that I do. It's like this, Mark, it's like this interview here that we're doing today. I love doing this. This is fun for me. I don't get to do it often. Like I said right off the top of the show, do I have time for this? No, I don't. But I have to make time because, look, as much as I want, it's a karmic thing too, man. If I expect people to make time for Spaced Out Radio, when people like yourself say, hey, will you make some time for us? I have to fit that in. I don't have a choice. It's karmic, And so my experiences going along with that, it comes with the territory. It comes with the game. And it's not frustrating, but look, I have no proof as to what happened to me. I have no photographs. the farm, because you wanted to get into this whole piece of property where everything happened. So at the time, my partner and her and I were hanging out with these people who had, it was in Mission, British Columbia, where they had a 10-acre parcel of land.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, the crap that was there that we experienced was amazing. If I could have afforded to buy that property, I would have.
Wow.
I really would have when it was up for sale, because it had everything. It was on a private street where there were only two houses. It was their house, and then at the end of the cul-de-sac, there was a driveway to their neighbor's house. And their neighbors at the time were probably in their mid to late 60s, the type of people who went to bed at 9 o'clock at night. Okay. And the two properties were horseshoed by thick forest. And what went on there was everything imaginable. There was ghosts there. There was spirit activity. There was dark spirits there that would, live across the road, the forest. I mean, I remember one time when we were there, we went into the trees and we were watching these spirits jump all over the place in the trees. And we went in there because we literally saw a shadow figure. And four of us walked into the trees, and I saw this shadow figure looking at me. You know how sometimes you get those two trees that kind of, it's one tree stump, but it splits into two trees.
Right.
I remember, like, I had this tree like 20 feet in front of me, and I was literally looking at someone standing in between, and it scared me. And I left the forest. The other three saw it, and they went looking for it. Where did it go? I go back on the road with my friend's wife, and we see this shadow person standing by this sign, maybe 30, 40 feet away from us. And we watched this shadow person morph into a bear, like a shadow bear. And her and I both yelled, bear. And all of a sudden, all of them come running out of the forest. And we turn and look, and it's gone. It disappeared.
Right? It almost sounds like a skinwalker type entity in a way, almost.
I wouldn't say skinwalker type, but there was something that was freaking us out. Dude, you look at the trees at night, you'd see all of a sudden we don't have lightning bugs here. Okay? And you would see in the trees all of a sudden these little fairies flying through the trees.
Really?
Right?
Fairies.
And at the farm, I called it the farm. And at the farm, there was so much happening. It was amazing. Like we would be sitting there in meditation and all of a sudden hear banging on the outside of the log house. It was like a rancher log house, small 2-bedroom cabin type house on this property. And we would be sitting there in meditation, and you'd hear bang, bang on the outside of the house, like something was trying to get your attention. You'd hear strange buzzing sounds and yet you go outside and look, there's nothing there. Almost like there's this energetic buzzing. In the back forest in September of 2013, we had my buddy who owned the property. He's like, have I ever showed you where because his family had owned that property for like 41 years. And he's like, have I ever showed you where this weird stuff happened when I was a kid? I'm like, no. So when he was like 10 or 11 in the back end of the forest behind the property, him and his buddy were playing cops and robbers back there, or tag or whatever. And he caught his buddy, and they were kind of panting, catching their breath. Okay, what do you want to do now? And they're standing by this tree, maybe 3 feet apart from each other talking. And all of a sudden they feel this whoosh, bang, right in between them. This whoosh and then bang. They look at the tree, and there's an old style Indian arrow sticking in the tree that went right between them.
That's incredible.
I'm not talking a carbon fiber, or even like back in the day when you could buy a wood one that, you know, that you would get at the sporting goods store. Not that type. We're talking like hand carved. Where would this come from when it's in private property? The boys that got scared, they ran back to the house. Okay. And he wanted to show me where this happened. So we're taking this deer trail. We're probably at this point 300-400 yards into the forest. And we come across this tree that is snapped at about 8 feet high. Snapped. And we're talking a healthy tree, man. Like, we're talking maybe that round. And it was pulled down, man. Like, the bark was, it was fresh. Like, the bark on it was still attached from the tree, the now tree stump, to the tree. And it was wet. Like, it had just happened within maybe a day.
It would take brute strength for anything to break a tree branch like that, that thick, like a toothpick.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Okay. I didn't know anything about Sasquatch back then. I was below the status of amateur. Below. And in my extremely amateur way, I said to my buddy Dave, his name is Dave as well, I said, you know, Sasquatch is known for breaking trees. We didn't have any windstorms in that time when that happened. There hadn't been windstorms for a while. We didn't have any rain for a while. Okay? There was nothing that would blow down that tree. There was no, in the tree, there was no bug marks like pine beetle type marks or anything that would weaken this tree. Okay, and pine tree, if you know anything like pine beetles, they kill the tree from the inside, and the tree dries out. This tree was still wet, still fresh, and we started getting this feeling like we were being watched, and we were looking all around, you know, because we weren't thinking Sasquatch. At this point, we're thinking bears, we're thinking mountain lions. And we just stop and look around. And all of a sudden we looked like straight ahead of us. And there's this big fir tree about 100 feet ahead of us. And we start looking, and there seems to be something under the canopy behind the tree, staring back at us, kind of peering out, and then it'd peer in, and then it'd peer out, and then it would tuck its way. Then it'd come out a little bit. You could see the shoulder, and then you could see the face, and then it would come back in. And I said to Dave, I said, "Do you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "I think that's a Sasquatch."
Right? What else could it be?
Exactly. Right. And we watched it for about 5 minutes. And on the farm, because they were there was a couple rules that they had on the farm. Okay. The rules were this. If we were there for our own research, there was no cameras. No cameras allowed. Because they wanted the phenomena to feel that we weren't there for our own kicks.
To capitalize on it in some way.
Absolutely. Number 2, if we were doing something with the phenomena that night or that during the day, there was no drinking or any type of narcotic use, even marijuana.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. It was, let's have a clean experience.
Sure. I understand that too.
And then let's talk about it. So, not my property. I'm not bringing out my camera, which is on my iPhone.
Sure.
All right. So we're watching this. And then all of a sudden, Dave's like, you know what? After about 5 minutes, he's like, let's leave this alone. We want them to know that they are comfortable here and this is a safe area for them. So I'm like, yeah, okay. So we literally go, thank you for showing us who you are. We're going to leave now. Pure communication. And it's weird because I'm left-handed. I normally turn to my left with everything. But on this time, I turned to my right. And as I'm turning to my right, so if this one is here at high noon, at about 11:30, or pardon me, 1 o'clock on the clock, I start seeing this tree branch shake. And it stops me. And that's where I saw the second one walk right through where that tree branch was shaking, maybe 75, 85 feet in front of us.
So you got a total, you've encountered a total of 2 of these entities so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other one was probably hiding behind, hiding behind the grove, or?
The one behind the tree.
Okay.
And then as I turn from my eyes leaving this one behind the tree, I turn this way. I see this tree branch shaking, which leads me to believe that there was a third one there. I see because something had to be shaking that tree branch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the second one walked right through, where I got a full right side and back profile of the creature. And it was massive, 7-8 feet tall, blondish brown, not blonde, reddish blonde, come on, Dave, reddish brown hair. Okay. It didn't have a neck. It never turned to look at me. And I quickly turned to Dave. I was like, Dave, there's a second one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was already gone. I said, did you see that? He was already 40 feet down the trail from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting spooked because I got this guy ahead of me, this guy now over here. And I quickly ran up to catch up to Dave.
Yeah.
And then we walked back to his place.
Can I cut in for 1 second, Dave? I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
When you were looking at did you get how good of a look did you get at these creatures' faces? The reason I'm asking is because I will admit to you, I'm not as adept with cryptid research as I plan to be in the future. I have a local Sasquatch group near me that's out of Georgia that they're kind of like my go-to people for that. And Ron Moorhead, I know him as well. But one thing I have seen, as far as the descriptions I'm hearing from eyewitness testimonies with their eyes, I've heard like 3 different kinds. I've heard some of them described as human-like, but a little bit bigger. I've heard a few testimonies about them having like a red eye, some kind of red eyes. And then the other one, and I've heard most of this from California. There was a lady out of California that reported having a very, very close encounter with a Sasquatch with her kids. But the Sasquatch, its eyes were very black and almost almond shaped. What's your take on all that? And how they look? The eyes look on the ones you saw.
Okay, I never saw the eyes on the one that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, we could see an outline of the face. So, okay. It was one of those bright sunny days where this thing was hiding under a very thick tree canopy that was quite dark. It was quite dark. Okay, and we were 100 feet away from it. So when it peered out from the trees, we could just make the outline of the face. Like we never saw the color of the eyes, whether they were almond colored, whether they were dark colored or red or yellow. Never saw it. The second one didn't even turn to look at us. So I didn't see any of the face with that. I just saw the big bulbous pointed head. Like it was literally, dude, it was like Andre the Giant's shoulders. With no neck. It just went shoulders to head, pointed head that's kind of sloped down, and he just kept going. So, I mean, when I hear of different eyes, I think there are different species of Sasquatch out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do too.
That, I mean, it's like there's not one species of human.
Right, exactly.
Species of human. Okay, we have little people, we have Asian, we have European, we have North American, we have African, we're a beautiful mix of different cultures and types of people.
Absolutely. I think God loves variety, and I think that's why he did it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But that's what makes it such a cool melting pot, man.
It is, man. It sure is, and I thank God for it every day. And I do.
Yeah. So I never got to see that. Um, but it was a trip, man. It was a real trip
I
to
bet,
have
man.
that sighting. And I want it again. I want to see Sasquatch more than anything more in this world
I do
again.
too. It is a matter of fact that the group I was telling you about earlier, this local here out of Georgia, they're called the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. They're fairly new, and they've been operating for only about a few months. They got several Army and military veterans in there, and a police officer, and they have been very successful. They went out to Okefenokee down in South Georgia, the swamp, and it is a hot spot for UFO and Bigfoot activity. And boy, do they get more than they bargained for.
Oh,
I'm planning to go out with them very soon.
got to let me know how that goes.
Oh, I
I
will, man.
I have a couple of areas here where I was starting to make communication, and then between two major forest fires in the last 4 years, it just killed my area. I have to find a whole new area now. But uh, here's the thing that I am learning, and I'm learning on the fly. Because once again, I don't want anybody thinking that I am a researcher. I am not a researcher. I am a radio journalist who hosts a radio show. And when I go out looking for Sasquatch, or I go out looking for ghosts, or if I go out looking for UFOs, I
Hmm.
am doing it completely selfishly. I don't care about the camera. I don't care about filming it, recording it, taking temperatures, or anything like that. I am there strictly for my own eyes, my own ears, and my own feelings of consciousness regarding it. And I just want, because a lot of times people will say, well, if you're out researching, trying to find this thing, why aren't you bringing cameras with you? Because I don't care. And I'm not saying that to be mean or sarcastic or belligerent.
Hmm.
I am out there for me to enjoy what mysteries this beautiful planet has for us.
Oh, absolutely, man.
I mean, dude, there is nothing more frighteningly awesome than when you are, and I've only had it happen twice, that when you are walking through a forest and you see a footprint of something that is massive,
Hmm.
massive. The first footprint I ever saw, man, was 18 inches long by 8 or 9 inches wide.
Wow,
That's a
it's
big,
massive.
but I mean, look, here's another interesting thing about it. The majority of prints, and you can ask any Sasquatch researcher this, the majority of prints found are single prints. Finding an actual track, like of a number of prints, is difficult. But here's the other weird part about that. 98% of 95 to 98% of all those individual prints that are found are right-footed. Why don't we see the left foot?
That is interesting.
Okay?
And I'm guessing you can tell by how much how the by tracking methodology, I guess, right? Like I'm not a tracker. I was a ground pounder in the army, but I
Oh,
never really got that into stuff like that. So you're just using tracking methodology, right?
no, not even, man. It's the big toe, right? That's all you're looking for in the one track, is the right or left, right?
Right.
Toes tell you.
I see. Okay.
Right? I got a buddy of mine, dude. Like, I don't know much about tracking, Mark. I got a buddy of mine named Mark as well. And this guy has been
Good name.
he's with a C, though. You're with a K, he's with a C. French Canadian Marks. And long story short, he has been a hunting guide, a wolf tracker, a mountain lion tracker. This guy has done some serious time out in the forest. And, I mean, there's times, dude, where we're walking out of the forest and he'll look down, I'll be up ahead of him, and he'll be looking down and he'll be like, oh man, he goes, the wild horses have been through here. And I'll look down and I won't see a damn track.
Right.
And I'll be like, "Where do you see this?" And he'll be like, "Okay, look at the way the moss is rounded right here." And we're talking, dude, the moss like this much, like an inch. But he can tell. His eye is that good. He can tell, right?
Yeah.
And it's just amazing being out there with an actual tracker. It's amazing, man. Amazing. I feel so safe with him out there. You know, we'll pull up. There's a couple of spots we go in my area here where if you're driving the logging roads, there's this that place that I love to go. Right in the middle of this logging road, you come down this bend, okay, this hill, and then it kind of turns to the left. And right at the bottom of this turn, there's always a puddle of water there. And this puddle of water, man, you find every sort of track possible. There will be moose, there will be wolves, coyotes, deer, porcupines, rabbit tracks, rat tracks, mouse tracks, marten tracks, every type of track that you can think of that's in the mid British Columbia wilderness will be at this little watering hole that never dries up or rarely dries up. And the tracks are always, you know, I'll go there with Mark, and Mark will be like, "Oh, yeah, that wolf track looks about 6 hours old, or that one looks about a week old, or whatever." And I'm like, "How do you tell?" He's like, "Well, you tell by the mud, right?
Right.
How has the impression dried out?" Right? I've never thought of this before, never had to, right? But the cool part about Mark, and I will say this before we move on. In 2016, we found the two prints within 200 feet of each other. One was on the logging road. The big one that I was telling you about, 18 inches, was on the logging road. And then a few days later, we went into that area to search. We went into the bushes and we found a 15-inch track. And right after then, you know, winter came, and then we went into this really bad drought up here where there was some major forest fires. Our whole town was evacuated for 15 days. Okay, it was pretty heavy stuff. And after the fires, I met my buddy Mark, and him and I just became. It was one of those things where literally we became insta best friends from the moment we talked for the first time. And
That's cool.
And he had never seen a Sasquatch print before. He goes, "You know, I believe there's something out there, but I don't really believe in this Sasquatch thing." He goes, "I've been in the forest 30 plus years, man. I've tracked animals." He goes, "I don't believe in it." I said, "Well, let me take you to the print." And that year we were so lucky, dude, with how dry it got out there, that when we went back to that print, like 8 months later, it was still in the dirt.
Dang.
That's how dry it got.
You got to wonder how much these things weigh. I mean, they got to weigh literally a ton, like a ton. They have to weigh. They're just massive.
Yeah. So I show him the print, and he kneels down at this print. And for the next 15 minutes, the only words that he could say out of his mouth, and I still bug him about this, were, "I don't believe this. How is this possible? What is this, Dave? I don't believe this. Like, what is this?" 15 minutes, the three same sentences. And I'm laughing. Okay. I'm laughing at this point. And the only thing that I could say to him was, "Welcome to the world of Sasquatch." He still hasn't seen one. We've been in an area, we've been chased out of the forest by them. Okay. And
that's what happens a lot, actually. That happens a lot.
But he hasn't seen one yet. But I mean, it's one of those cool things, Mark, that just happens. But if you're not looking for it, you're not going to know. Your eyes train on what you know. So for Mark, who's been a 35-year hunter, when he's out in the bush, he knows to look for black bears. He knows to look for grizzly bears. He knows how to look for deer or moose or elk or caribou or mountain lions or lynx or bobcats or porcupines or whatever it may be. But when you're not looking for Sasquatch, the chances of seeing it are rare. And the other chance is this: there's also an old First Nations legend up here that says you don't look for Sasquatch. Sasquatch allows you to see it.
So, do you think that certain people that they target? Let's get philosophical for a second. Do you think it? In your humble opinion, do you think that these? First of all, this is a two-part question.
Yeah.
First of all, as far as what these entities are, I know if you could speculate, if you could speculate, what are these creatures? Where are they from? Another are they from another dimension? Are they from another reality? And the second thing is it seems like people have so many different types of descriptions. They're kind of similar, but have but they have very distinct differences, like on East Coast, West Coast, and then even some of the Native American and First Nation. I like to call them First Nation people, like you do, also. By the way, love that. I love my Native American and First Nation people. Love them. But they have their own unique stuff. What's your take on all that?
I will say this: the First Nations people, I believe that if we ever got off of our collective asses and started paying attention to their stories, to their legends, to their information a lot more, I think we would be a hell of a lot closer to answers than where we are today. Okay. I have had the pleasure of talking to numerous First Nation people about this, and they are very guarded by what they tell me. They will give me tidbits of information, but they are still very guarded. And I will say that I believe there is something special about this creature. I do believe there are different kinds. I don't know if it is flesh and blood. I don't know whether it is supernatural. I have a lot of questions. And this goes far beyond why haven't we found a body? Nature is very good at cleaning up after itself.
Yes.
Very good. But there's a lot more to that than we know. Okay. After I had my Sasquatch encounter with the two, I think it was about a week, 5 days to 15 days after that, we were doing a perimeter walk around the house and the property, getting a feel for the spirits that were going on. And we were up in an upper area, and then the property kind of slopes down. There's a bunch of blackberry bushes that kind of slope down, and there's a pond there. Okay, we're on top of a mountain. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, something starts splashing in that pond, like something big. Well, we don't have fish in those ponds. There's no beavers up there, okay, because we're too high up on the mountain. What the hell is like either throwing like 30, 40-pound rocks into the pond or taking a giant stick and slapping it into the pond? So we hear this and we say, okay, we're leaving. And then there was one more splash and we walked towards the house. But it felt like there was something there. In behind the house, there's this old cherry tree. All right. I don't know how old that cherry tree was, but I do know that it was old because all the bark was black, almost black on it. And I kept getting the feeling that we were being watched. And I turn and I look, and right beside this cherry tree behind the house, and we're probably 80, 90 feet from it, maybe further. No, maybe 120 feet from it. I see this pixelation. You know when they pixelate someone's face on television to block out
Mm-hmm.
jizz?
Like the
Okay.
Predator, kind of like the Predator type, like pixelated camouflage.
From ground level to about 8 to 10 feet high. And the funny part about it is there were 4 of us. Only one other person could see that pixelation. The other 2 couldn't. So they're like, I don't see anything. Let's just keep going. So we walk to the front of the house. Maybe 20, 30 seconds. We get to the front of the house, and from behind the house, we got roared at.
Oh, wow. That's creepy.
Roared. Like this is 300 feet away. Roared at for about 20 seconds.
Wow.
Okay.
That's significant. That's a long roar.
Yeah. Dude, it scared the hell out of us.
I would have shit my pants, man.
We all went in. We all went inside.
Yeah.
We all went inside. And so, long story short, I don't know what this creature is. A lot of First Nations believe that it is a shapeshifter. It is interdimensional. It has very special abilities, which is the reason why, if we look at a lot of the photos, they're blurry.
Right.
Okay. That being said, we look at it and we think, okay, well, is that really possible? I understand the flesh and blood people out there. I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that there's something more to it. I don't know what that is.
I feel the exact same way because like I said, I'm not that adept with Bigfoot research, and I don't claim to be, but I would say roughly about half, at least around half of the testimonies I've read, and I've read Ron Moorhead's book also, Quantum Bigfoot. If you haven't, to all you listeners out there, and you, of course, Dave, who have not read Ron Moorhead's book, Quantum Bigfoot, please check it out. Great book. But I'd say about half of the cases I've looked into roughly have some sort of parapsychological element to it of some kind.
No, and you're right. And, it's one of the biggest things, dude, that we need to be able to figure out. Okay, this is why I get pissed off at researchers out there, those who squatch around.
Right.
Okay. I actually banned the word squatch from my show.
I remember the episode you said that, actually. I remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, if you want to get into that, we can.
Sure. I mean, I'd love to hear your opinions are welcome here. Absolutely. Go ahead. I want to hear why.
I first learned of the word squatch while watching the television, the only 17 minutes of wasted time I ever had watching the television show Finding Bigfoot. I come from the area where the word Sasquatch was created.
Wow. Okay.
Which was at the Chehalis First Nation and near Harrison Hot Springs in the lower mainland of British Columbia. That's where the name Sasquatch comes from, which I believe translates into wild hairy man.
And that's a First Nation term, correct?
Yes, Sasquatch,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a couple reasons why I didn't like it. Number one, I thought it sounded extremely foolish. Like typical egotistical researcher who has to take something of somebody else's and then make it their own. Number
right.
two, I thought it was an insult to the First Nation that created the word. Now, a lot of people will say, look, we nickname everything. We do. We call extraterrestrials aliens. Right? I mean, there's another one. But Sasquatch has a lot of nicknames. Down south, it's called things like the booger,
mm-hmm.
or a beast, or whatever. But let's stick to this one. And I just hated the word. Like it grated on me like cheese on a grater. Just rubbed me the wrong way.
Just
And
felt cheap to you,
it
basically, right?
like it cheapened the subject.
Right.
Then I met the late Dr. John Bindernagel at a conference in Surrey, British Columbia. And friends of mine had put that conference on and had told them that I had a Sasquatch experience. And he was looking for me and I was looking for him. And we run into each other in the hallway face to face, him and his beautiful wife. Okay. And me and my buddy. And I said, Miss Dr. Bindernagel, I'm so glad to meet you. My name is Dave Scott, Spaced Out Radio. He's like, Dave, I've been looking for you, man. You got to tell me this Sasquatch story. So I tell him the story that I told you. And he's like, can we go there right now? Like, let's leave the conference. I said, well, unfortunately, I'm no longer friends with the people who own the property. So I don't think they would let us on. He goes, well, let's sneak on. This guy's 81 years old at this time, man. He's like, well, let's sneak onto their property. I want you to show me where this happened. He goes, or let's just go knock on their door. I'm like, no, it's an hour and a bit away. Who cares? Let's go. Okay, this is how excited he was about this, right? And I'm like, well, I don't think there's going to be any evidence there. This happened, a couple of years ago. And either way, we started talking about his research. We didn't go. Wish we would have now, but hindsight. I never interviewed him,
Right.
by the way. I talked to him, but I never interviewed him, which really, really bugged me. But anyways, back on topic here. After about 20 minutes of talking, I asked him a point blank. I said, what do you think of this word Squatch? I said, I hate it. I said, I can't stand it. It bugs me. I'm curious your thoughts. And Dr. Bindernagel, I mean, he's probably 5'11", 6 feet taller than me.
Mm-hmm.
He stands up straight, takes a deep breath, and he sighs. And then he says the most profound words to me ever. He goes, 70 years of research ruined by one word.
I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because it does, the way you're presenting this to me, it does seem like it's cheapening an incredible phenomenon that we need to understand and take seriously. I get it for sure.
He then follows up by saying, Mark, he goes, I have been trying for decades to get the scientific community to get on board with my research, trying to get people to come out and see the evidence with me. And he goes, it's been tough. And then he goes, then you look at this idiotic television show that is Squatch this, Squatch that. Somebody farts behind the camera. Oh, that's a Squatch.
Right.
Right? It made a mockery of the research to the point where scientists were now laughing at him. People who thought that he was, okay, maybe I'll give this a chance. See the television show, Squatch this, Squatch that. All right, no, not interested. It's a joke. Look what I see on TV. Right?
Yeah.
And it killed his research. One word. Now, a lot of people will say, well, it wasn't the word. It was, the television show's bad or whatever it is. Yeah, but the term is synonymous with the television show. So when I hear people go out, and I take a lot of heat for this, Mark, and I really don't care. But when I hear people say, hey, we went out squatching this weekend, or our team's called Squatch USA or Squatch Canada, immediately I know there is zero research there that's even worth covering. Zero. Because if they were serious about their research, They wouldn't squatch. Squatching is for the weekend warrior who's going to put on all his camo gear because he feels the need to put that camo gear on during non-hunting season. He's going to load up on 2 firearms, a rifle, and because he's going to go squatch that. He's going to kill that squatch if he has to.
Yeah.
Right. That there's nothing scientific there. There's nothing that is advancing the field there. And a lot of people, Mark, will say, listening to this, Dave, you're a jerk. You're a prick. You don't know what we're doing. You're just making assumptions. Yes, I am making assumptions, but I've also interviewed enough people who squatch to know that if you squatch, I can't take your research seriously, because real researchers out there, scientific people who are looking out there for this creature, they don't squatch. They're looking for the phenomena.
Right. They're actually doing research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you make a very compelling argument, and I can appreciate your stand on that, because it does make sense. And like I said, it just feels like it kind of cheapens it, or does it? It makes me feel like they're not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And hey, I have people in the Bigfoot community who will say, well, Bigfoot's a slang of the Sasquatch. No, Sasquatch is a Canadian term. That's what our First Nations prefer to use and name this creature right across Canada. Look, Sasquatch in my area by First Nations is called squitch.
Squitch?
Squitch. Okay. Wow. And you go up north a little bit, it's something like skewitch or something along that line. Right?
I guess it's relative.
It's relative to every language, because don't forget, a lot of the different First Nations have different languages as well.
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, people will say, well, hey, why, in the US, Bigfoot is kind of insulting. Well, no, that's the term that was coined for the research of the creature.
Right.
The creature hasn't come out and said, hey, I'm Norm from the mountains of Fargo, North Dakota. Right. I mean, it hasn't done that.
Right.
We don't know if it has a last name. What if its name is Julius Carpenter? Right? From the mountains of New York. We don't know. Right? We don't.
Yeah, man. Dave, this has been a really, really interesting conversation, and we're kind of running out of time, unfortunately. I'd like to have you back sometime, maybe in the future sometime. I want to talk to you about UFOs, and also I want to tell you about some of my personal experiences, either on or off record sometime. There's some things I've talked to a few people. I've talked to Daryl Sons. I've talked to Kathleen Martin and a few other people, and also a couple people from MUFON. And there's some things about it that I feel compelled to share with somebody, some of which I haven't really shared before, and I'd be really interested in. I kind of feel like you might be a candidate to talk to about it.
I apologize for eating up most of your show about Sasquatch talk, but
no problem, man. I enjoyed it.
I will make time again for you to talk some UFOs. How about that?
Sure. Hey, man, that's great. And like I said, sometime I'd definitely like to talk to you about those things I described. It's really, really bizarre stuff, and it's out there, but it happened. So definitely. Well, like I said, man, I really appreciate Dave. I really encourage all of our listeners to check out his website, spacedoutradio.com. Your show is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Fridays, correct?
Yes, it is.
And for people who want to get involved with your program and interact with Super Chat and other things like that, do they go to YouTube, or what app do they use for that?
They can find us on YouTube for the video cast, or Twitch. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, every podcast format that is out there. We're on there. And if you happen to be in an area where one of our terrestrial radio stations will pop up, whether it's Ridgecrest, California, Apache Junction, Arizona, Mississauga, Ontario, Noonan, Georgia, New Orleans, or Bellingham, Washington. I always forget that one for some reason. Feel free to tune us on in. We're always live.
That sounds great, man. I'll be tuning in tonight, by the way. I'll be joining the chat and having fun. And if you're with your listeners, and I really, God bless you, man. I appreciate you coming on my program.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right. You've been listening to Project Stargate. I'm your host, Mark Brenner, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.